Thanks, Angela, and hello everyone. I know I can't see everyone, but and apologies that I couldn't join. I was really looking forward to the event, but yes, I have been unwell, as Angela said. So we wanted to try and be present and share some information. So I'll share a brief introduction to housing adaptations before handing over to Angela and Sanjeev and Robert. But I thought it would be helpful to introduce myself. My name's Kyri Photiou. I'm head of information helpline and support at Muscular Dystrophy UK. I've been with the charity for well over 5 years now, and the team I work within is our helpline and advocacy team. So we provide support to individuals, families living with muscle wasting conditions, whether they've been newly diagnosed, quite a way into their diagnosis journey and need some advice, information, support on how they can, whether it's apply for benefits, how to manage their condition, which specialist teams they should be under, etc. That's part of the work that we do. So as I said, I'll present briefly, so just bear with me. I will share my screen, and hopefully that all goes to plan. Hopefully you can see that with no problems. So as I said, I'll just present briefly on housing adaptations. This is a very general introduction, and I appreciate I won't be able to take any questions this morning, but I'm happy for anyone to direct questions directly to me or our team afterwards. So generally, adaptations refer to changes to the home. So these are usually structural and permanent changes to someone's home. It could be things like widening doors, fitting ramps for access. It could be, substantial changes to someone's bathroom to make it level access, to remove a bath, to input a wet room shower. It could be things like fitting lower work surfaces to make someone's kitchen more accessible, so they can use it on their day-to-day, and so it supports someone to remain independent and to manage their day-to-day tasks. With adaptations and big changes to the home, those can be quite expensive. So if applying for funding, which I'll talk about shortly, through local authorities, the need for adaptations must be essential. So the work needs to be done to make someone's home accessible, but you need to meet the criteria in order to get that funding. In general, an adaptations process starts by going through the council. If you're looking at council funding, it of course can be done privately, but you would need to ensure that you make necessary judgments and checks on things like regulations, planning regulations, particularly if people are looking at extensions, etc. For anyone applying through local authority, depending on your situation, it could be assessed as being a low priority. And therefore, we would anticipate that some people could wait a bit of time for some assistance for this. And one of the key things about adaptations, it's really important to look ahead, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So giving as much time for the process, as it can be lengthy, which we recognise can be very difficult. So just very quickly on housing adaptations and sort of funding, the process for accessing funding depends on the housing sector and the tenure of where you live. So for example, if you rent through a housing association, they will and may manage adaptations in a different way to your local council, for example. But typically the four most common housing arrangements are private sector, so that's if the property is owner occupied, or if it's private rented, and there are still considerations to be made if you're living in private rented accommodation and you feel that adaptations will support you, and I'll touch on more on that a little bit later. And there's also the social rented sector, so local authority that's rented through your local council, and housing association properties too. Generally speaking, if minor adaptations are recommended to your home and they cost around £1,000 or under, these will usually be provided and fitted free of charge through the local authority. These well, these minor adaptations are not means tested, so they're not based on your savings or income. And the process for any of these would start with your local authority, and usually the occupational therapy services who will be referred into and have an assessment through them. So I'm going to talk largely about funding adaptations through what is called as a DFG, Disabled Facilities Grant. So what is a Disabled Facilities Grant? It's a sum of money, a grant for adapting or providing facilities for an individual that has a condition or a disability to support them in their home. It could be a houseboat, a caravan, or in common parts of a building containing one or more flats. That's quite an official description. Disabled facilities grants are mandatory grants. That means that a local authority must provide a grant to someone who has met all the required conditions. However, it's important to mention that also local authorities can decide to provide discretionary assistance too for adaptations, in addition to or instead of a mandatory DFG, so the mandatory disabled facilities grant. All grants, as grants are administered by local authorities, it's important to be aware that there are conditions attached to these grants. So the local authority may make it a condition of the grant that works are carried out in accordance to their specifications. That's something to consider when you're looking at this. For example, it could specify the materials that need to be used. All local authorities generally apply a mandatory condition that the work they're recommending is carried out within the first 12 months of it being approved, although we know that complex and structural changes to homes can take quite a lot longer than 12 months. So this can be extended sometimes. But one of the other conditions is that it could be carried out by one or two contractors that they've recommended or that they've gone to for estimates with the application. So yeah, as I said earlier, grants under £1,000, so changes under £1,000 aren't means tested, but for a disabled facilities grant, these are means tested for adults. That means that some adults who don't qualify for the total funding may have to pay some or the total cost of the adaptations. But for children, any child up to and including the age of 19, if they're in full education, it's non-means tested. So those are important things to consider. And yeah, as I said, usually these grants are administered and paid by your local council's housing department team. In terms of the amounts of the funding, so there is usually an upper limit on the amount you can get. The maximum grant payable for a DFG in England is £30,000, 25,000 if you're in Northern Ireland, and 36,000 when you're living in Wales, so quite considerably different. Scotland has a very different system for housing grants. Under the Housing Scotland Act, local authorities are allowed to provide grants, loans, subsidised loans, any sort of practical assistance to anyone who owns their own home for sort of repairs, improvements. So the system is different there. And if you are based in Scotland, we would definitely encourage you to contact our team if you want some specific information relating to the system there. I talked about it before, but I mentioned discretionary assistance. In exceptional circumstances, it is possible to have a discretionary payment. So paid through the council. So just to come on to discretionary payments, as I mentioned, in England, for example, the maximum amount is £30,000 towards the cost of major adaptations. But we do know that in many cases the amount available really only goes a small way towards covering the cost of works. Sometimes it doesn't really scratch the surface of what's needed to cover the costs, and we know that can have a real impact on individuals, on families who need those changes in place to support them to manage their day-to-day, their independence, or their child's day-to-day lives. So to help with further costs, local councils do have the ability to provide discretionary assistance or a discretionary payment, either as a grant or a loan, to either supplement a disabled facilities grants because the works are very expensive, or because the individual is unable to simply afford their contributions to the works. In some circumstances, there's no restriction on the amount of assistance that may be given, and discretionary payments can be given in addition or as an alternative to a DFG. But I will stress that these are not often talked about quite openly, and you may not know that you could probably ask to see if they would be willing to top up the amount that you've been awarded under the DFG. I think if you're going through a housing adaptations process and you've been given the maximum and they've said this is how much more the works cost, then sometimes families unfortunately are asked to pay out of their own pockets. This is can be particularly difficult, particularly in the current climate with the increased cost of living. You know, it really puts families in a very difficult position where the works are needed, but they're at a limit as to what they can provide. So, you know, knowing that you could go back to the council and ask them if they would consider discretionary payment to support, you know, that's something that can be quite important. And just moving on to housing associations, as I said, they have different processes. So anyone within housing association property should check their policies and procedures, as they will be different in every area. And lastly, the bit about private renting is if you rent from a private landlord, there is no obligation for them to agree to carry out any structural major adaptations to the home, as they are the owner. And you would need their permission to carry out any adaptations, any minor adaptations also. So just bear that in mind if anyone's currently privately renting. There's no sort of legal requirement for them to put in a DFG, apply for a DFG. So some private landlords may do that. So you'd need to discuss that with them directly. Um, just a couple of other things to help. If you're not quite sure about eligibility to a DFG, there's a really helpful website called Foundations, and I'm happy to share it with the Action Duchenne team after if they want to share it with anyone. But they have some really great resources and some tools online which allow you to do sort of like a mini self-assessment on whether you'd be eligible for a DFG, and also looks at the DFG the allowances, sorry, and whether you would be entitled to the payments through it. So the tool is really helpful to check if you're eligible for a DFG. It includes like a postcode lookup to find your local authority. It gives you a self-assessment on what type of adaptations may be beneficial. It has a decision maker on whether considering moving might be alternative to adapting, because we know that's a very real possibility when some adaptations may not be possible, but some families choose to look at just moving home altogether. And yeah, as I said, it's an indicative assessment of eligibility for a DFG, and it looks at the means test result too. I'll stress that these are only it's only a guideline, so we would encourage people to go through their local authority once they've maybe had done this to indicate whether they may be eligible. I also wanted to talk about a sort of support in sharing information about adaptations for people living with muscle conditions like Duchenne. So MDUK has an adaptations manual. It's currently the second edition, but we're going to go through to review this guide. But it's really helpful not only to explain what muscle wasting conditions are, but also is very in depth and takes you through a number of chapters, including bathrooms, access into the home, bedrooms, kitchens, and the looks at current and future needs and understanding what is possible, and aim to address any challenges. And it provides really practical information and examples about what's available to families. It's been looked at by occupational therapists who are known to us and who work closely with families living with Duchenne and other muscle wasting conditions. And it's a really good resource for you to use if you're currently thinking about going through the process or are already in the process. And we'd encourage people to share that with their occupational therapists, and particularly when there's like a limited understanding of conditions like Duchenne. And just to move on really briefly to grants for housing adaptation. So obviously I spoke about the local authority grants, which are mandatory. And I know we spoke about the cost of grants, which can be really great. And whilst there is the option to ask for discretionary funding, that's not guaranteed. So some other families or individuals who've been asked to pay towards the cost of grants, may struggle with that increased cost. So it's worth looking at if there are any other grants that could be awarded to support with those costs. So there are a couple of other grant funding charities that state on their websites that they provide funding towards adaptations. And as I said, I'm happy to share those if anyone's interested in knowing those organisations. Always important to do some research into the funding applications to see what's involved, because some of these will also be means tested, and the process to apply can be a little bit lengthy in that you may not be able to apply directly for yourself, but it has to be maybe someone involved with your care, so like an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist. And yeah, those can be really helpful for people who are expected to pay some towards the grant. And a couple of coming to a close shortly, and a couple of points to consider when it comes to adaptations is these 3 points really. So changing needs, planning ahead, and working together. So we often hear from families, individuals, of the challenges that they have when adapting their homes, particularly in thinking of like the current and their future needs and understanding what's possible. We know the process can be often difficult, stressful. It can be very lengthy sometimes. Some families we know of, it may take a period of months, if not years, to go through the process. And we would definitely encourage anyone who's not sure of how to begin the process, already going through the process and needs some support, to get in touch if they need additional support. But these 3 points I thought were important to mention. So changing needs and planning ahead. So when it comes to adaptations, it's important for everyone involved to understand the progressive nature of conditions like Duchenne. And we know from hearing from others that their condition can often be misunderstood, or the focus on adaptations is how someone is affected at the moment, so today, but doesn't look ahead at what adaptations may be needed. And this is important when a condition is progressive too. And this is very common when you're looking at adaptations, particularly for young children or teenagers with Duchenne who may still be ambulant, and therefore some of the equipment you could expect into adulthood may not be needed at this stage. In many cases, though, professionals involved in the process, such as occupational therapists, may have no experience of working with a child or adult living with Duchenne. And so part of this is understanding the progression of someone's condition, which hopefully will allow the occupational therapist and anyone else involved, it could be architects designing the adaptations, to design those in the best possible way. I know it's easier said than done, but the idea is that it's always I guess simpler to plan ahead than to react to something that might be seen as a crisis moment. So future-proofing the home is really key. And whilst it is important to address the individual's needs at the time of the assessment, it's really important and essential that everyone's involved in this decision making. And careful planning is needed to anticipate the needs of the individual. Adaptations to the home can be very lengthy, can take more time than someone may think. And it involves a lot of different teams, and you'll need to have, your clinical teams could be involved in terms of providing information and evidence about your condition and how it may progress and what would be suitable to support you. So I guess it's never too early to look at planning ahead. And lastly, I touched on it about your clinical teams and OTs and everyone else involved in the process, but working together is really key. It's really vital for people with Duchenne, their families, carers, to have a good, clear, open communication with the teams involved, so healthcare professionals, anyone involved in the adaptations process, such as the local authority, the housing teams, the OTs. I think good communication skills are really vital. So listening, being flexible, responding appropriately to everyone's views and opinions, but making sure that your voices are all heard, because that's really important in this situation. So anyone that is, as I said, as a charity, MDUK can support. Our role is to support anyone with Duchenne or muscle wasting conditions to get the support they're entitled to. We can support someone if they're going through a challenging time with housing adaptations, or they feel they need bit of input or information on how best to proceed with maybe a challenging situation, or you just want to know how to begin the process, we're happy to be on hand to support. You can contact us. Our details are on the screen, and as I said, I'm happy to share more information with the team after today. But yeah, we'll encourage anyone just to get in touch if you need any additional support. That was everything from me. Thank you for listening. I know that was quite a whistle-stop tour of adaptations very generally, but hopefully that was helpful. I will leave you with Angela, Sanjeev and Robert for the rest of the session. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Sanjeev, and I'm a 27 now actually. Birthday was a couple of days ago. I'm a 27-year-old living with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I'm a music producer and like access sort of activist, I guess. But yeah, I guess I'm just going to talk a little bit about my own adaptations and what I've got, and sort of experiences with going about that. So yeah, I guess I'll start from the top, like the equipment I've got at the moment. So we recently moved. I live with mum and dad. We recently moved house a couple of years ago, so it's quite kind of fresh, I guess. Um, but yeah, that adaptations that we ended up getting was like a ceiling track hoist, which we had in our house before, and also a wet room, which makes it a lot easier because before that we had it was like a bath or like a chair that kind of went up and down, but it wasn't really that accessible. Like as I grew up, I didn't really have the support I needed, so we got like a wet room and a commode. So that's the equipment um, that we've got. But yeah, I think like the process at the beginning was it was just so long, and I guess with social work, like as Sophia said, like a lot of them don't have experience of people with Duchenne. So like it's like they don't really know much about it, and it can be quite frustrating because it feels like they don't really look into it, or they don't really like make an effort to find out more about the actual things that you might need. Like they kind of just treat everybody the same. So like anybody with like mobility issues or anybody that uses a wheelchair is just treated in the same way. So they just presume that you just need the same thing. But obviously the nature of Duchenne, like everybody progresses at different rates. So even within Duchenne, like it's not really that black and white, but obviously to them it is because it's just like on paper, and on paper it is black and white. So I guess they don't really take like I feel like they don't really take much of a personal take on how to go about it. They just kind of want they just presume that everybody's the same, I guess. So that was quite frustrating. But I think the most I know I'm not kind of just moaning about social work, but that's what it is. So what was I gonna say? I was gonna say, the most annoying thing I think was just the time it took. Like, I think we moved. Was it? I think it was February. February moved, and I think it was like it must have took about 9 months or something. 6 months, 9 months, something like that. And I was just a nightmare because we didn't have a shower, so like that I couldn't wash. Like so, we ended up just winging it and like buying a paddling pool and a commode. And so like, can imagine it was just chaos. It was just a nightmare. So after a couple of months, like we kind of thought of that idea, but before that we were just really stuck. And like every time we told them, it's just as if they weren't that bothered. Like they couldn't understand that I couldn't have a wash. Like they just couldn't get that. So like I was a nightmare. So it was like I was so long where I couldn't actually have a proper physical shower, um, which obviously isn't great for like skin and stuff like that and dry skin and that type of thing. So yeah, I guess that was the most frustrating thing that they just took so long in getting everything through, and it just seems to be so much like paperwork and like tick boxes that they need to go through. There's so many people like that I feel like it needs to go through before it's signed off. which I understand, like it is a lot of money, but just the process just takes so long, especially when it's like necessities that you need. Like it's a shower. Like I'm not asking for like something crazy. You know what I mean? It's like literally just to get washed. So I feel I don't know. I don't know how they prioritize it, but yeah, that's a bit annoying. But yeah, I think that's most of what I was going to say. To be honest, yeah. I think we'll get Robert next. I think we're going to get questions at the end, aren't we? Or right at the end. Okay. Or if anybody else has got any questions, I suppose we'll take it after. Yeah, cool. Cool.
I had a good job there from Sanjeev. I'm sure it'll all be downhill from here. I'll take over. Like, this is the second time I've done something like this. So I wrote down an introduction. This is, hi, my name's Rob, and I've got a beautiful assistant. But they couldn't come today. Yeah, they couldn't come today, so you've got Tracy, you've got she's a second best carer. So I live in the northeast of England, so a little bit more up from where Dracula lives. A bit like near Whitby. And I live in an adapted flat. So it's a housing association flat. Yeah, so that's they all adapted flats, so I didn't really have to worry about grants with that. But I used to live with my parents, where they adapted the garage. So that became my bedroom and then put a little bathroom in there. But I can't really tell you much about how that was done because I was 10 at the time. And I'm 37 now, so I've got 10 years on Sanjeev, unfortunately. And I was a lot more able-bodied. So we had things like light switches that were at a height I could press. Yeah, so that's not an option anymore, but if you've got kids that might be at that stage, that's something you could consider. Now I live in my own flat where I can talk about the adaptations that have proved useful for me so far, including in my bathroom and bedroom where most of the changes have been made.
Bear with me.
I quite like that. Most of these are not very good subtitles, I'm lost. Can't get the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Too
yeah. I also use some of the like environmental controls. I mean, they're technically not house adaptations, but more adaptations to technology. But largely my experience with adaptations has been quite straightforward. We always met the occasional obstacle of an OT that knows everything. But in my case, yeah, so when I live independently, that's quite a large topic. But the adaptation's pretty simple. So when you actually go into my flat, the doors are being widened. The, my flat's apparently a bariatric flat, so I don't know what they were trying to say. Yeah, so we've got double doors, so I could actually wheel my bed out into the back garden. That'd be something I could do.
Yeah.
I've got a ceiling truck hoist that goes from my bedroom into the bathroom, and there's a H frame in there. I don't have a commode, so much to my OT's displeasure, I just hang above the toilet. But yeah, it works. I mean, we always have to find things that work. I've got the bath that actually raises, that goes up and down.
Helpful. Especially on your back.
Yeah, what else have we got?
Bottom.
So, yeah, I've got the environmental control that controls the telly. And then, yeah, the rest of my needs I just use, like Alexas and smart speakers and stuff like that. You don't have to wait as long to get them. You decide you want to get it at the end of a week. So that's what I've done with most of them. So I've got a couple of smart light bulbs and plugs, and a speaker next to my bed so I can do my radio and stuff with that. And that's all I've wrote, yeah, so I'm hoping that gives you some idea of what is available, and it's just been Sanjeev to answer some questions. Yeah, open up to you guys. Thank you.
So do you want to stay where you are?
Yeah, I'll just move along a little bit.
So I've got a couple of questions to ask, and either of you can answer that. So the one question I've got here, what worked well for you during the early stages of housing adaptations?
Sorry, say that again?
Sorry, what worked well for you during the early stages of housing adaptations?
Do you mean like early stages with a condition, or when you first start getting the adaptations?
When you first started, I mean, was it quick for you? I mean, you say you've moved house recently.
Yeah.
What was it like? What did you have the first time in the other house? Did that
So
take a long time?
that was pretty similar. I was a lot younger then, so I don't really remember an awful lot about that bit. But I guess like the best part about it, that we got everything eventually that we needed. So I guess the good part of that, like they did say and we got all the they were done at the end, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess that's
yeah. Robert, I think you, is that right? You live independently now. You don't live with your family.
Yeah, that's true.
What was it like? Was it difficult? I suppose you didn't get too involved early on before you moved. Because most of it was probably done by your parents rather than you. But was it easy when you moved?
Yeah, when living with my parents, I was till about 25 or something like that. And then I moved into little house, well, a house round the corner from mum and dad. I think they were scared to let me go there. That's a parent's job, isn't it, I guess. So when I moved there, I knew what was going on a bit more. They had, I just needed the hoist and another garage adaptation for that. But I don't recall that taking too long. But again, that depends where you are. I think at that time we were lucky with our council. I think they all have a lot more money then.
Yeah, I think finances are possibly difficult because I went through housing adaptations myself, but that was sort of 20 years ago and things were changed. You know, there was a lot more money available than there is now.
Well, a lot of the thing that happened back there though was because I did live with my parents, we got less funding. But as soon as I actually live independently and not with my mum and dad, when it was a lot quicker to get things done because there was nowhere else for help me. I mean, like our mum and dad would have helped me, but if you say for can't, then it would have been along a bit quicker.
Do you think it was an advantage you leaving home? Did you find that you got things done quicker because you were independent rather than actually living with your parents?
Yeah, but I think it was just the fact that I wasn't in my mum and dad's house.
Yeah.
Because my mum and dad still helped me with a lot of things, but me being in a separate house seemed to work a bit better.
So I think we've answered the second question. So the third question I've got here is, how have you managed to overcome difficult or challenging situations?
Yeah, I guess the paddle trail is a good example of that. We just went on, we were racking up rates for so long, got out of the way, like we could get around it. Because obviously the bathroom was accessible, I just had like a normal shower. So what we did was we got the paddle pool, and then we got extension for the shower head. So it came out of the shower.
So I've got images of you in your packet.
So luckily we had like the commode at that time, the shower chair. So like, as you can imagine, I was like, I never did the furniture with my commode. And then, but I worked in the end to match,
Yeah.
so I guess that, I guess that's a good example.
Yeah. I think sometimes when you have problems, you have to be quite imaginative to get over them.
I think it's just if you want something done properly, I think you just got to do it yourself sometimes. But a little tip about the bath, sometimes you can take the side of the bath out, and then the legs from a manual hoist will go under it. So for a temporary fix, if you're waiting on a ceiling track hoist in the bathroom, that's sometimes an option. I did that for a couple of weeks. I think I got that tip from you, Kath. Yeah, yeah, Kath's got loads of tips, so if you got more experience than me, I guess that comes with age, doesn't it, Kath? Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Have you both got a shower room, or do you have baths?
Had a bath in my old house, but we've got a.
Sorry,
Yeah.
say that again.
We had a bath at the old house with like a chair that like swiveled round. But now we've got just like a wet room.
A wet room.
But it feels a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier.
That's good. Have you got a wet room?
It's kind of a wet. We haven't got a drain on it. We'll put a bath on top of it. So it's kind of a wet room, but not really. And I've got my bath. But I mean, I'm older than Sanjeev. I think I get a more sore. So I'm having a bath where I can soak my muscles and not get cold. That's a better thing for me to have.
Yeah, yeah. I'd just like to add to that. My son had a bath because that's what he wanted, and he had so that he could actually spend sort of an hour in it, soaking and enjoying it. But from a carer's point of view, I wish he'd had a wet room, and but I couldn't persuade him otherwise. Right. Let's just come over here to Kath.
I just wanted to, Sanjeev, you should have spoken to me. So it's not a great alternative, but when you move into a new house, if the bathroom's upstairs and you're waiting for that shower room to be built, there are more and more changing places toilets now, and local to us, which I presume will be local to lots of people, we have a sports centre, and they have a changing places toilet that has a shower room in. So not ideal, but a trip just a couple of miles away to go and have a shower 2 or 3 times a week. With all of the equipment in there, there's H-frame ceiling track hoist and sometimes a closet mat toilet means that you can avoid the paddling pool. And although for me, I would have probably gone for the paddling pool method.
Yeah, normally just give me the hose. Put you in the garden, give you the hose. That's it.
Right, so if you two can come closer to the microphone, just a little bit. Is there any questions?
Hi there, guys. We have gone through our house adaptations, but my son particularly has ambitions to live independently in his own place in time to come. So, Robert, I'm particularly interested in his question to you would be, how did you get your own place?
I had to go to my local council, and they have an association called Beyond Housing, and that's like social housing. And in my case, we had the adapted flats that we just built, and I think if you go with a housing association, most local areas have already been evicted, and they actually adapt the flat for you, so you don't have to worry about getting a homeowner's permission or anything like that. And where I am, it's like a little block of flats. I think there's about 10 of them, and they're all adapted, and there's 2 on the ground floor that are a bit more adapted with the wider doors. So that's where I live. I should take some photos. I've not really got. You might be able to have a look at it. There might be a couple on my phone.
You should come to one of those houses.
Yeah, I'm known for being the organised one.
Yeah. So how long did that process take from first inquiring to actually getting a?
Well, I don't feel like I could give a proper answer to that because when I started applying, that was pre-COVID, and then we had the pandemic. So it was like 2 years on top of a year and a half, I guess. So I think it just depends where you end up in the queue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, gents. Sanjeev, we'll not talk about the Barrowlands, but one thing I'm interested in is what bit of kit, if any, outside the home that you found invaluable. So, whether it's a mobile hoist or whether it's a off-road wheelchair or anything else, or even just things for eating and drinking that, that we don't really think about just the housing adaptations, but just things that you can take with you in your van that's made a difference to your life.
Yeah.
I think I've got a little portable mattress. That's quite handy. And then I haven't got a hoist because I've got nowhere to actually keep that. But I sometimes borrow my friends. And then, yeah, that's it really. I mean, I've got the adapted van through Motability. But yeah, mostly the mattress and the hoist. For me anyway. What?
Ventilator trolley.
Oh yeah, I've got a trolley that carries a ventilator. We carry a lot of stuff.
I was just
From one room to the other, you've got the ventilator on the trolley and Rob the other hand, so it's just a lot easier than having to keep moving the ventilator, especially if you're on your own.
I was just going to say that so I had a ceiling hoist and I had a manual hoist. So when we were first looking at adaptations and things, and we needed a hoist, my local authority lent me a manual hoist, and I just never gave it back. So when we went on holiday and stuff, I had a manual hoist to take. So and they never checked up. So that was that.
It's like I can get lost on it.
Can I just add, as Rob's carer, something in the back of my mind is always emergency, because an emergency within the fact we need to get out. So as Rob said earlier, having doors that open out and being able to get the bed straight out is wonderful, because now I don't have to worry about that, and I know I can get him straight out of that flat without any worries. Because in his old house, I always used to think, well, what was I doing if there's a fire? How would I get him out? So, I think that's really a good thing to have.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, my son was upstairs in his bedroom, and we always asked, what do we do in a fire? And they said, pull him, if you can, leave him on the bed and pull him downstairs on the mattress.
Yeah.
But if the fire is in the stairwell,
Don't bang your head on every step.
If you're on your own with that person, you've got to get them out.
yeah. And I think that is something you need to think about, whether you're going to have an upstairs bedroom or a downstairs bedroom.
Yeah.
Any other?
I don't know who this person is. She keeps following me around.
I was going to say, I actually had a.
So my son's 8 and he's using his power chair a lot more these days and stuff. So we're trying to plan ahead. We just moved into a bungalow and we're looking to try to renovate it. And he has siblings and cousins that are running around the place and going ahead of him and going in and out the back door and all that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to ask about automated doors. The front doors, whether anybody else has any experience of them, but also internally, because I'm just thinking like the amount of times that like him getting in and out of his own bedroom, we're trying to look at the ideal scenario for him, I suppose, and that ease of access around his own house, and whether or not anybody has any experience in looking in the UK manual. There it looks at like there is disadvantages to sliding doors for guys as things progress over time. It might work as well for him. I thought that might be a good solution. But how do you automate then? Can you, it all costs a huge amount of money. So just trying to get any experience from anybody around ease of access through your house and around your house in an ideal situation.
I know a few people that have had automated doors. They come with like a little button that you can put on your wheelchair. And then when you press that, it'll open a door. It's got like a little arm which swings it out. I know you can get door locks and stuff like that that are connected to your phone, but I don't think they actually open the door for you.
Have you seen or heard of them being done internally as well, or are these for the front door, or the back door, or
These are ones for the front door, but I can imagine if you do it for the front door, they'll
the door
definitely
thing?
be able to have it inside.
You can get them internally as well.
Yeah, there are companies out there that do internal doors as well as external doors.
I know Shelley just done her
Sorry, I've got my hand up the cap, but I've got automated doors in my house. So I'm happy to talk to you about those after.
Thanks. I just wanted to let you know, are you from Northern Ireland or Southern Ireland?
Southern Ireland.
Okay, so I have a friend in Northern Ireland, and she has, and I think it's quite common over there, she has had, through a DFG, I think, Alexa fitted doors and blinds throughout her house. So all the internal doors and the blinds and windows, just using Alexa to operate them, which I think is a much more affordable option for councils. I could put you in touch with her. She works at Pathfinders as well.
Could that mean Alexa have arguments all the time? I'd end up locked them out.
Mention to your OT. Mention to your OT, they should put you in contact with local companies and stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you.
I was just going to say, going back to the equipment that you can take with you with that, we've got a small lap, just around 3 foot, 2-3 foot lap.
9 times out of 10 we go to places that are accessible, but not always.
Yeah.
So it's handy to have that just in case, just that little.
This is not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we used to go on holiday, we ended up taking a trailer. No, it was the only way I could get, because my son wouldn't sleep on anything other than his air mattress. So we had to take an air mattress and the equipment that goes with it, and a spare hoist and all sorts of things. And in the end, trying to get the family and us and all our luggage and everything else in the car just wasn't. And we had a big van type vehicle. The only way we could go abroad really was with a trailer. It worked.
I think with one of the easiest things you could take is Lilo. You get like a big inflatable mattress and not fit in a rucksack. Go out and take up a lot less room in your van.
You're obviously not that picky. My son was picky.
No,
He'd sleep on anything.
Like
wasn't
Tracy
gonna
will
work.
tell you I'm fussy.
Oh, yeah.
I've got we've got one of the awkward disabilities, that's for sure.
Hi, so with the internal equipment, so things like baths, toilets, and so on, and we also have a lift in our house, they often come with service agreements and warranties for about 5 years. After that time, is it universal that the families then pay for any repairs and things after that time? Or has anyone persuaded OTs and councils to fund that? Because it's very expensive, isn't it? We've just had a lift one come through. I think it's about £450 a year just to service it twice. So it becomes quite expensive when you have lots of different equipment. I just wondered if anyone had found a way or a solution for that.
So when we moved recently from the house from Sleight.
And in our house, we had a free fall lift, and it had run out of its warranty, and they did extend that for us. So we just spoke to our OT and she extended that for us. Okay.
I think it just depends on the, you know, you have to ask. Yeah.
Hi Robert, our son's 16, coming up for 16, and he's wants to be as independent as possible. You talked earlier about Motability, and you got a van for your independence. Can you just talk us through that process? Because he wants to go through that, and obviously I know Motability do a lot of tests and stuff like that, and obviously supplying a car. But how did you find that process for you? And obviously going through finding a car that's suitable, going through your tests and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I don't actually drive my car.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But it's something you can get. You can get cars where you can get your wheelchair into the front. But with Motability, I think you just have to apply to them, and I think you would have to be getting your Motability benefit.
Yeah.
then what happens is they'll take that off you and that'll be used to pay for the car. But with that, you don't have to pay for insurance or a lot of the repairs. You just petrol, and then they'll have a little assessment with you and see what you need. So I can sit in the front passenger seat, but I drive in through the side, and I'd recommend don't get a car where you go inside. But if he reckons he's able to drive it, you should definitely have a go at that. But I think they will supply that, but you might have to get some additional funding, I'm not sure. Kath used to have a car where she drives, so you might be best to have a little chat with her as well later on.
I am here all weekend. I would suggest getting in touch with firefighters. We have loads of people within firefighters who have Duchenne, who drive. I'm actually working on it at the moment, producing a video showing different ways at different stages of Duchenne. Some of us still driving just using hand controls, chairs, whereas others have
really sorry. I've got a loud voice. Specialised joystick controllers that are very sensitive, but there's a wealth of knowledge, so do get in touch. I haven't got anything with me today, but I've got a business card that I can let you have. I would say that's probably the best thing, to talk to other people with Duchenne and see how they've done it. It's much more complex than just applying. Sorry, Rob, but it is.
And if you want, you can come and have a look at my car. I'll get there, Tracy can show you one.
Yeah, essentially it's using a WAV.
Yeah.
But the driving is actually pretty expensive. And it's good to get it right. Probably it's good to know as well. I don't drive at the moment, but I do drive. They don't know everything that you want to know either, because you've never driven. So that scenario is not a great scenario to start with, so it takes a while to get it right. So I do think the best thing is to talk to other people with similar conditions to find out how they do it, that would work for you.
Yeah, you don't want me behind the wheel, you should see me Grand Theft Auto. Road rage.
I was also going to say, so at Action Duchenne, we're in touch with a lady who does driving lessons for disabled, and she's quite, a font of knowledge. So again, we can always put you in touch with her. She's always happy to
Actually, I had a little crash in my car the other day. We got it stuck on a curb, didn't we? Because a lot of the wheelchair accessible cars were lower to get the wheelchair in, and we cut this curb. And then there was a lot of other car parts on this, so it's not always just on it. And it just got pinged up on there, and then the car thought we'd had a proper crash. So the engine cut on, and we still have no radio, do we?
No.
So we 4 hours in the car with no music.
Right, I was going to say, I don't want to deprive you of your break, so we're going to have a break now till 10 to 11. Next session in this room will be about starting college and living independently, so you might have to come back to that.
Yes, if anyone's got any more questions, I'll be here till we're leaving tomorrow, aren't we?
So thank you very much,
I have a good
Sanjeev
deaf
and
vote,
Robert.
so make sure you speak up. Thank you.